we asked the question, how do women respond when people or life hurt us? We looked at the other two responses, which was shutting down and self-doubt, as well as hurting those who hurt us, which is tied with today's response, which is pushing people away. Now, as I state that, you're probably like, huh? Isn't that the same thing as shutting down? Well, shutting down means to avoid the person in conflict, of course, and to stop engaging in life. That's what we looked at before. I believe pushing down is an extra step. Now you're really shutting the person out of your life. You're saying that I no longer want you to be a part of my life. Sometimes when you shut down, you may still go to the person afterwards, you're reconciled and still be friends. But in this particular case, you're saying no, 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 no. These are some of the reasons why we push people away. We shut others out due to fear, being hurt, being taken advantage of, or being disliked. We feel unworthy to possess positive relationships. We do not trust others, which include their motives. That's one for sure. We feel guilty for hurting the other person during conflict. And we may feel uncomfortable being vulnerable too quickly in the relationship. Or the other person is too vulnerable too quickly in the relationship. Sally just told me all her business and I just met her. Too much. I'm moving on. David also pushed people away for some of these reasons. Let's pick up his story. After killing Goliath, Saul recruited David to be in his army. While in his army, everyone loved David. Jonathan, Saul's son, Micah, Saul's daughter, everyone except for Saul. In fact, Saul became so insecure about David, so afraid that David would take over his kingdom, that guess what? He tried to kill him. And guess what David did? He fled. Just like Elijah in the other story, when Jezebel tried to kill him, what did he do? He fled. See, all human. Once David fled, he ends up traveling alone and makes it to a temple. While he was there, he met a priest, and the priest was like, David, why are you by yourself? Aren't you the lead guy in the army? Shouldn't you have other people with you? And David, you know what he did? He didn't tell him the truth. He actually pushed him away. He was afraid for his life. The only thing he could do was ask the priest for some bread because he was hungry. That didn't stop there. David continued his journey and he ended up meeting a Philistine king. And the king said the same thing. David, why are you traveling alone? David, still afraid, started to act insane. His way of pushing people away was to be a little cray-cray. Why is all this important? You would think David could have been honest and truthful with the priest. The king, I get that one. He was protecting himself. I know what it means to want to protect myself like David did. As I shared before, I had a very interesting childhood. When my caregiver had a bad day, we all had a bad day. There was a lot of things that happened in my house, things that I did not want people to know about. So what did I do? When I met new people, I pushed them away. I kept them at an arm's length away. I didn't want them to know the truth because I didn't know what the outcome would be. Like David, I feared for my life. Well, let's fast forward. We find David, guess what? Hiding out in the cave. Like who else hid out in the cave? Elijah. See, human nature. You flee, you hide. That was the same with David. Unlike Elijah, David, while he was in the cave, he possibly wrote Psalm 122 Psalm 57 and 142. I was close. And these Psalms revealed David crying out to God as he was overwhelmed. But he asked God for deliverance. He also praised God and clung to God's loving kindness. Because David responded in this manner, he ensured that he grew spiritually for God. Unfortunately, when we continually push people away, it affects our spiritual growth. For instance, We no longer allow God to use people to help develop our character. We no longer seek input from others on spiritual matters. We no longer participate in our church community. We emphasize our faults and feel unworthy to possess a relationship with God. We do this because we don't have any other voices to counteract that negative voice. We stop being vulnerable and assume others will hurt us in the same manner. Unfortunately, I did most of these things. When I shared before about being removed as a youth leader, it was hard for me to trust those in my fellowship. I started to push people away. I would show up, but I didn't really talk about myself. I didn't allow others to have input in my life. I was just, let me praise Jesus and keep a step away from others. But God intervened. He had to work a little bit harder to get my attention. For instance, one day I was speaking to my family doctor because I was kind of confused about taking a new position. I was actually quite scared. I knew that it required a lot of work and I was unsure if I was up for the challenge. While I was telling these things in general conversation, my doctor responded with, God is providing you this opportunity. All he asks of you is to walk in that journey. And I was like, oh. I listened, and God surpassed my expectations with the job. God worked a little bit harder for me because he didn't want me to stay in the state of pushing people away. I want you to think for a moment. Think about, how have you pushed people away, and how has it affected your spiritual walk with God? Has it kept you from doing the things that God called for you to do? Think about it. If David remained in a state of fear and self-preservation, he would have stopped God from using other people to help him. Now, I'm not all suggesting that you remain in harmful situations or harmful relationships. No, don't do it. Get out. But what I am suggesting is to not give up on people. Align yourself with godly people who have the best intent for you. In fact, we have a couple of resources on the website, ahealingforpeace.com. 2 books that I want you to pick up. It's called Safe People and Boundaries. These are great books as you continue to learn how to have healthy relationships with other people. Again, I don't want you to be in a harmful situation, and I also don't want you to push away those that God has for you to keep you on your journey. I also suggest and request that you pray for those people that will keep you on your journey. And as you're praying for these people, also pray to have the courage to receive them. Because sometimes God brings people to us, but they may not look or they may not talk as we may think. And so it's so easy to say, I'm not going to listen. But I ask you, while seeking God's intervention, help him, or allow him, that's a better way of saying it, allow him to guide the right people to you. As you do this, remember David. Even though he was fearful and he pushed people away, he did circle back and remain united with God. He cried out to him, he praised him, he asked for deliverance, and he clung to his loving kindness. As a result, he returned to building God's kingdom and left the cave. That's the same for us. God is calling us out of that cave, out of that hiding place, and he's asking us to return to him and build his kingdom. Will you return to his calling and build on his behalf? As I stated before, we just started the conversation. Please go to ahealingforpeace.com and get the companion workbook to this series. To this video. I know that when you do, it will continue on your healing journey, and hopefully it will inspire you all the same. And while you're there, of course, drop us some feedback. Let us know how we're doing. Are these conversations helping? And what else do you want to talk about? See you next time.